Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday. Norwich City back in Championship action this weekend. The trip to Deepdale. Feels a while since Norwich were last in league action. Watford there a couple of weeks back, the bank holiday Monday. So looking forward to it. Different man in the dugout. Adam Harvey, delighted to be joined by Connor Southwell, the usual man in the dugout for these preview shows. To start off, Connor, it's been a pretty mad couple of weeks since the last time Norwich were in league action. We've got a different manager. We've had that FA Cup defeat to Blackburn. We obviously spoke to David Wagner now on 3 occasions. So just want to get your thoughts on him and what he's been saying so far.
Really like him, really like the cut of his jib, as they say. I think it's hard not to. And look, there were some easy wins for him to make, one of which being he wasn't Dean Smith, to be frank. And that's the case with any new manager. He brings a freshness, but there's a real sense of energy and enthusiasm and determination that I think he's brought with him. And actually, that 9 months that he's had since his last job at Young Boys to where he is now and kind of how he's walked into Norwich City, he looks refreshed, he looks recharged. And maybe you could argue that was at odds with how we saw Dean Smith when he first arrived at Norwich City. So really like him, really like what he's saying. He's saying some really good things, purely on a kind of footballing level. He's saying stuff that I agree with, that I think a lot of people will agree with and understand and will have been wanting to hear for a while. So it's been a positive start. He's winning kind of the narrative war, if you want to say that. He's winning kind of the press conference war, but as always, the proof is in the pudding, and that of course will come, the first of which being tomorrow, and what happens on the pitch, and that is how he will be defined. So I remember, I'm old enough to remember when Alan Russell gave that wonderful press conference that people really, really enjoyed. And of course, what happened on the pitch wasn't able to back that up. So David Wagner has got an opportunity. It kind of felt like last week was a dress rehearsal. This tomorrow now feels like the start of the real thing. And I think it's natural for everybody to feel a little bit of excitement at perhaps what that will bring and what he will bring to Norwich City as well. So yeah, so far so good, but we have to caveat with the fact that we haven't seen a whole lot on the pitch so far.
Yeah, also got football and transfer speculation to speak about. So get your comments in. We'll come around to those towards the end of the show. But before we sort of focus in on the game, Connor, just want to get your thoughts on a certain Todd Cantwell. We got an update on him this morning. There's been speculation surrounding him in recent weeks, with Rangers being supposedly very interested. There's an unknown Championship club supposedly had a rejected bid during the week as well. So David Wagner, there's a clip on our social channels at the moment. You can go and have a look, or you can watch the full press conference on the YouTube channel as well. Just want to get your thoughts on those comments, Connor. And, maybe are you a little bit disappointed that Todd Cantwell's maybe not got a fresh slate with David Wagner, or do you think this was almost written that his future was elsewhere before?
Yeah, I think it's looked and felt inevitable for a long time, hasn't it? I was thinking the other day, actually, a year ago, we were at the Valley for an FA Cup game against Charlton. He was left out that day amid what was, I think, a fair bit of transfer speculation. I think he turned out to be ill or injured in the end. But this kind of discourse has followed him around for a period of time now, and it's not healthy. And it feels like we've kind of had this conversation about fresh starts, and then it kind of goes in a cycle, doesn't it? Fresh start, that doesn't really happen. A new manager kind of either loses trust or loses faith, or he falls out of form. He comes out of the side, and then we end up where we feel like we are at the moment, where we're talking about his future, and there's a lot of speculation around his future. And actually, I'm writing a column on this at the moment, and it's a long time ago now since Todd Cantwell was really good at Norwich City. That's been a significant period of time, and actually, I was looking at it again for the column. It's been, I think, 129 games that he's played for the football club, scored 14 and recorded 12 assists. It's not really good enough for a player of his ability and with his talent. And I don't think anyone has disputed his level of talent and his ability and his natural ability. And of course, without having both sides of the story and without having all of the facts on the table, it's very difficult to fully construct an argument as to why we've ended up where we are. But it does feel like, I think both of them will have sat down and said, look, this isn't working. This just is not working anymore. And it wasn't working under Dean Smith. I don't think it would have worked under David Wagner either, because the evidence over the last 18 months is that we end up in this place. And as I said, it's been a long time now since that really good Premier League form that we saw from him, where he scored 6 goals in what was a fairly disappointing season, and he goals against Manchester City, Chelsea and Arsenal. He's getting touted with £30 million moves. That's a long time ago. And actually what has happened kind of since, and even before, where he wasn't really near Norwich City's title winning campaign the year before, it was a real surprise, the way in which he kind of burst onto the scene, to use that cliched phrase. It actually feels like that run, that period, that block of form, even though it's been used to kind of benchmark him, and that's been the levels that people have been comparing him to. Actually, you look at it across the piece, that's been the exception to the rule, that period of time. And actually, the majority of his Norwich City career, sadly, has been kind of this frustrating lack of end product, productivity, performances, consistency, form, and that's probably why we've ended up where we are. And there is a real sadness for that, because I've always felt that even though he has got a lot of criticism and he has had a lot of people frustrated with him, I feel like largely that's come from the place of people knowing the ability that he has and being disappointed that they haven't seen that on a consistent basis, rather than and look, there has been some personal stuff on him, so let's not pretend there hasn't been, but certainly the bulk of it, I think, has been the disappointment that we've never really seen that. And from my perspective, it's like, well, it was never meant to be this way, and I still think there's a really good footballer in there. There is a really good footballer in there. I think he needs a fresh start. I think Norwich City need a reset from this narrative and from these questions constantly being asked. So, no, I'm not surprised to answer your question that he hasn't been given a fresh start under David Wagner. It does feel like he's run out of road at this football club. And, you know, whoever is lucky enough to get their hands on him, and it's looking increasingly like it will be Glasgow Rangers, are getting a very talented footballer who just needs to re-find his spark, his love for it, maybe. I think Michael Beale has the potential to do that. So I think everyone from a Norwich City persuasion will wish him well, but there will be a tinge of sadness, I think, attached to his name forevermore now that he wasn't able to show what perhaps everyone felt that he could show during his time at Norwich City.
Yeah, obviously attention focusing in on Preston this weekend. We saw David Wagner's first game against Blackburn in the FA Cup. There were sort of signs of positive, sort of things coming from that game. So I just want to, I think you put a post out on our social channel yesterday, Connor, sort of asking fans what they wanted to see at Preston. So my question to you is, what do you want to see from this Norwich City team at Preston? Obviously, Wagner's now had a full week of training. There was that double session as well on Wednesday. So maybe his sort of messages will sort of come across to the players a bit more this week.
Yeah, I want to see clarity in terms of structure, a clarity in terms of game plan. I think they're two that I really want to see. So that looks like high pressing. That looks like attacking fullbacks. I want to see them look a little bit more cohesive in the final third. Whether that results in goals or not is probably a different conversation. So I think there's a lot of areas that Norwich City need to improve in. But crucially, I'm going to Preston. We're travelling up today, so going up today, but primarily tomorrow, looking for a performance, really, and a performance that offers some reasons for hope and encouragement. And that might not mean a win or even a draw, or it may well be a defeat, but we just want to see some signs that actually this is something and a project that can move in the right direction and move in the right direction with a real swiftness. Because the one thing that they don't have and what he doesn't have at Norwich City at the moment in terms of their objectives this season, however you kind of, whether you believe them or not, is time. He doesn't have that commodity. So we need to see a performance, and we need to see constructs of his messages and his ideas being implemented to a standard. And we saw that last week to an extent, and maybe the framework of it. I think you just want to see it perhaps a little bit more developed and a little bit more progressed. And look, the nature of the way that he's trying to play means that there will be times between now and the end of the season that Norwich City look very disjointed, and I think we have to expect that, and people should expect that as well. And there are going to be portions and periods and blocks of games where it all looks a little bit messy, and teams are going to work them out as well, by the way. But if they can get it right, and then I think that they will have some real success, and I think we will all have some real fun with what he's trying to do at Norwich City. So maybe that's the overriding thing for me. I just want to see some fun, and I just want to be entertained, because I think everyone from Norwich City persuasion probably hasn't felt that enough so far this season, particularly the supporters. And obviously, with nearly 1,000 heading up to the Northwest tomorrow, whether those numbers would have been the same if Dean Smith was still in charge, we can probably have that debate. But I think it does feel fresh. It does feel clean. It does feel like there's a fresh start of sorts. So I guess you just want to see them take that on and mark it with something. Primarily a result, of course, but also a performance to back that up. Yeah,
Chris Smith in the YouTube comments asking for team prediction, but I kind of want to throw that around the line that David Wagner said this morning about sort of two strikers. He's got 3 top quality strikers was the line, and only 2 of them will probably play, because even though they could play in other positions, he kind of wants to focus in on where they're strongest. And you feel like Josh Sargent centrally through the middle is probably where he was referring that comment. He's also said it in Monday's sort of unveiling press conference as well. So with that, kind of what sort of system do you think he's going to set up with tomorrow? Because that to me felt like a line that was almost like, I'm going to play two two up top. So what system do you expect him to play, and which players do you think he'll go with? Because someone like Ono Hernandez got his opportunity in the cup.
Yeah, just on the strikers line, I feel for Jordan Hugill, who I presume hasn't been put in that conversation. There's obviously been speculation linking him with a move away, which I don't think any of us would find particularly surprising. I think in terms of pure system and in terms of setup, I could see them going for. It is a midfield diamond, but it's semantics. Smith never liked to call it a diamond, but that kind of 4-3-1-2, I could see him adopting. That was something that he used at Schalke when there wasn't much width to varying degrees of success. So I could see him do that. I think you're right. I think it will be a front two. At times last week, Norwich did kind of certainly out of possession, played a 4-4-2, and there was Onel Hernandez on one side, and you'll have to forgive me because I've forgotten who was on the other side. So you might have to jump in here and remind me, but I've completely Marcelino Nunez was on the other side. There we go. I did remember. So that wouldn't surprise me, certainly out of possession, but I think in possession it will be Kenny McLean at the base. I think we'll see Sarah and we'll see Nunez. Or will we? No, maybe we won't. I'm trying to think about this as we move. Yeah, but that's kind of the shape and the system that I think we'll see anyway, with then Sargent and Teemu Pukki up front. Which, as we've said numerous times this season, and Dean Smith tried to play them as a two, but without maybe the success, which I'll come on to in a minute. But that is a partnership that feels like the best in this division, certainly on the quality of those players. I think Teemu Pukki's got a lot of stick that's been really unfair, if I'm being honest, in recent weeks. I think there's only 3 players in the Championship who've scored more goals than him this year. I'd have to double check that, but that's staggering considering the lack of service that he's had. And actually, I think if he does go with that system, the major change is going to be the height and the width of the fullbacks. They're going to get forward. They're going to join the attack. We saw last week Norwich or David Wagner wants his teams to have essentially a line of 5 that go and attack. And that's kind of what you see at Manchester City do, certainly Liverpool do. So there should be, by virtue of that, more attacking situations and possibilities. So that should benefit Norwich City playing a front two a little bit more, a variation as well, because you've got Pukki who wants the ball to feet and in space and makes those dynamic movements, and Josh Sargent who will give them a presence in the box. So I think it will be those two up front. I think it's probably just the kind of manoeuvring of the pieces in and around them, whether that's kind of the 4-4-2 that we saw last week, and I wouldn't be wholly against that, or maybe the 4-1 or the 4-3-1-2 that I've spoken about. So either one of those, I think, is possibly a possibility.
Yeah, before we delve into the comments and sort of just maybe go around January a little bit, just want to focus in the microscope on the opposition for this weekend's game. Preston, they of course won the reverse game 3-2. Troy Parrott's late winner at Carrow Road that day back in October. He's been injured ever since that game, and he actually returns for this game, probably going to be amongst the bench for Preston, which is ironic. I actually spoke to a Preston journalist on Terrace Talk, which anyone who's not viewed it, you can go and watch that now on our channels. They're 21st in terms of the home form league. I think only won 3 games so far at home, so there's definitely issues in terms of their sort of form at Deepdale. But across the board, Connor, they seem to be the kind of team that love a 1-0 win or a 1-0 defeat. Just I think it's 24 goals scored, 26 against so far this year, just above Norwich, 1 place above them, 10th in the table at the moment. So what are your thoughts on, Preston as general so far this season, but also Ryan Lowe as a manager?
Yeah, I really like Ryan Lowe, really liked his Bury side, really liked his Plymouth side. No surprise to me to see him doing pretty well in the Championship, given the relatively limited resources that Preston have. They've lost their last 3 at home, which is a really interesting statistic, whether you subscribe to the Along Come Norwich view, and that means that tomorrow they're gonna halt that run, or Norwich can continue it. It's probably a debate for another day, but they're a good side. They're a team that certainly in the last few years, but Ryan Lowe has made greater than the sum of their parts for sure. They're in that kind of hunt for the playoff places. I thought they were really good actually when they beat Norwich City earlier in the season at Carrow Road, and that it was that game that kind of was the beginning of the end for Dean Smith. It's where the slump kind of began. So they'll be difficult. They try and play football the right way. In many ways, I think that might suit what Norwich City are trying to do with the gegenpressing and going after teams. And because I think Preston will comfortably have the ball and want the ball, so that may well lend into Norwich City's hands, and there will be counter-attacking opportunities within that, I'm sure. So I really like them as a team, but I think, as we've said so many times on these shows, countless times, I feel like a little bit of a broken record. If Norwich City can get their performance right with the quality of individual they have in that squad, they should have enough to win this game. But of course, that statement hasn't often been matched up with the evidence. So we need to see that, and we need to start seeing that. And of course, if Norwich can do that, then suddenly things begin to look a lot rosier, because they'll be more in touch with the top six, and Preston are in that hunt as well. So it feels like an important game, a big opportunity. It's a really interesting one to package, because it feels like Norwich City need to win it, but obviously for all the various reasons, maybe it feels like naturally you want to kind of lower that expectation somewhat. So I'm really intrigued by what we get this weekend from both sides, from the Norwich side, from the Preston side, from David Wagner, from Ryan Lowe. And I think it has got the hallmarks of an excellent encounter, which probably means it's absolutely nailed on to be a 0-0.
Yeah, Norwich City not won a league game at Preston since 2017. They obviously won the FA Cup game there a few years back, but the last league win was that, I think it was James Maddison's first goal, a 3-1 victory around about the Easter time, I seem to remember. That would be correct. Yeah. It's just after Alex Neil had left. Obviously, then eventually went to the parish of Preston not long after. So, with that, Connor, obviously, so I spoke about kind of the transfers. Preston done a couple of bits of business this week. Delap and Cannon have both joined, both forwards. They've got a few issues in terms of the striking area. I think ML Reese is injured for a little period of time, which is probably a benefit because he's a very good striker. But with that, Connor, just want to get your thoughts generally on the game tomorrow from a Norwich City perspective, and we'll go around to the score prediction just after that.
Yeah, really, really big opportunity, as I say. I think they've got a chance now to build a bit of positive momentum, as is the case with any coach. You want to start off with a win. Like I said, last week felt like a little bit of a dress rehearsal, but I felt there was enough positive signs within that to provide some encouragement. You want to see them taken on and progress this week. So for me, it's all about the performance. It's about seeing Wagner's principles of play being perhaps more developed and more embellished than they were last week. And if that's the case, then you would hope that Norwich City can come away with a positive result. As I said, time isn't really a commodity that they have. They need to win this game, really, particularly given their predicament in the league and the narrative that surrounds them. Feels like a really good opportunity for them to do so against a team that a lot of people will feel like, certainly was the case on Dean Smith, they didn't beat a lot of teams in and around that top half. So an opportunity to change the narrative, an opportunity to build some positive momentum that has to actually be based on something. They can't go and win a football match and not look very good, because I think we've got enough evidence that doesn't equate to Norwich City ending this season in the playoff mix, which is where they want to be. So primarily a performance, absolutely a result like everyone else. So a big opportunity is probably the way that I would package it, and I think also an element of intrigue, right, in terms of how David Wagner approaches it and how his methods get kind of implemented. So yeah, excitement, intrigue, a little bit of mystery, and hopefully some goals and 3 points as well.
Yeah, I spoke about the sort of issues that Preston have endured in terms of the home form. Norwich City, on the whole, been okay in terms of their travels so far this season in terms of points return. So with that, Connor, I want to get a score prediction from you for the trip to Deepdale.
Oh, I think I might have lost you at the there we go, you're
right
back. Score prediction. I'm going to go positive for this one. I'm hoping to see some kind of managerial bounce. I'm hoping to see 3 points. I think Norwich might win this for 2-1. I've talked myself out of a goal there. So I'm going to go 2-1 Norwich. How about you, Mr. Harvey? What are you going for?
Yeah, I can see Norwich winning this one as well. I think, sort of that first manager bounce, it kind of always goes one way or the other, doesn't it? They either get a win or they don't. Of course, Wagner's had his first game, but this is his first league game. So for me, yeah, I think I'm going to go 3-1 Norwich. I'm going to give you that extra goal that you've taken off there. I think someone like Pookie and Sargent, both of them getting on the score sheet, that would sort of help their confidence going into this sort of next run of games. Of course, Norwich got some quite tricky fixtures coming up. Preston's not easy. Coventry is not going to be easy. Burnley not long after that as well. So this feels like quite a crucial period as to whether Norwich are going to sort of continue to sort of push towards the playoffs or whether it might be just a generally kind of look towards next season and reset kind of job. So I think the next 5 games could probably dictate that. Just the last late comment here. Gun or crawling goal, Connor, what would your thoughts be on that one?
Gun for me. I got the sense, and we'll only really find out tomorrow, but I got the sense that Tim Krul would have played last weekend, whoever was in the dugout. I think it was just an opportunity for him to get minutes in the same way that Angus Gunn played in some of the League Cup games earlier on in the season. So I think it would be extremely harsh, given that I think Angus Gunn has been one of, if not the best Norwich City player so far this season, certainly in terms of consistency and actually Norwich's form isn't on him, even though it maybe coincides with when he came into the side. So, I would hope and would like to see Angus Gunn between the sticks. What about you? Same, or would you like to see Tim Krul come back in?
No, I think Gunn was probably unlucky not to be in the Player of the Month award that Norwich City put out. I thought he was excellent in the last month, probably their standout performer. And I'd say he's probably up there in terms of the top 3 for Player of the Season so far, despite sort of only playing, maybe 10 games or so now in the league. I've been very impressed with him. I think his distribution in terms of, just when he gets the ball and finding men in those sort of flanks, I think it's just much, much more better than what Krul's is. So for that reason, I think I'm with you, and I'd go with Angus Gunn tomorrow. Just sort of keep his momentum. Just want to sort of round off the show, Connor, by just talking about January. I mean, Isaac Hayden, we kind of got a little bit of an update on him this morning in terms of there's not an option there to cancel his loan. So what do you think? We've heard now from Wagner, we heard from Webber. Do you think Norwich sort of later in the window will do any business incomings in terms of a loan or even a permanent, or do you think, or will it sort of be dictated by what maybe goes out the door?
Yeah, well, I think the intention was at the start of the month that they do at least one. I don't think they'll do much, to be honest. I could see one, a real stretch, 2, but I think we're probably looking at 1. I think we're probably looking at an attacking wide area. I think it's probably just, as is right, by the way, to give David Wagner time to assess and look at it on kind of a wider perspective and make his assessment of the squad. So, yeah, I personally would be absolutely shocked if we got to the end of January and Norwich City hadn't done something. But I really don't think they'll do a lot, and I think it's important to stress that. So I think by and large it's kind of what they've got, but particularly if, when Cantwell does get confirmed, Sam Byram's obviously out, so I would imagine that their first sort of instinct, if that turns out to be as bad as maybe it looks, that we might see Barley Mumba back at Carrow Road. But again, that would be kind of a shame for him, because I'm not sure he'd get many minutes if that was the case, and David Wagner kind of confirmed that today. But it's really the top end of the pitch. They've lost Aaron Ramsey. They're going to lose Todd Cantwell. Feels like they need another creative presence in there. So that would be the area for me that I would look at as maybe a stopgap on a loan until the end of the season, and then reassess then. So I could see something. What that will be, obviously, we'll wait and see, and we'll keep you posted as and when we find out or learn such things.
And there we go. We'll park January for the time being. We're going to get on the road. We're going up towards, staying in Stockport this evening. So we'll be at Preston tomorrow afternoon. Lots of great content across our channels, of course. Ewan Roberts' latest column is up. You can go and watch David Wagner's press conference from this morning if you sort of want to see what he had to say about sort of the Todd Cantwell situation. Team news, that's all packaged in there. Terrace Talk is up, of course, as well. So if you want to get the insight on Norwich City's opposition tomorrow, then I spoke to Tom Sandals, a great journalist up in the northwest. So that's well worth a watch as well. We're going to get going. Have a great weekend. If you're making the long trip to Preston, then make your voices heard. David Wagner spoke about sort of 1,000 fans making the long trip up there. Of course, the unity is what we need moving forwards if Norwich City are going to have a successful end to the season. So thanks for joining us. Thanks to you, Connor, for joining me this lunchtime, and enjoy the rest of your Friday. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you at Deepdale tomorrow afternoon.